Welcome to the Tech Waka podcast, where we dive into the journeys of New Zealand's top tech leaders. Your host for today is Jakub, bringing you conversations with tech leaders and innovators from across Aotearoa. Join us as we uncover the experiences, challenges, and successes that shape our tech community.
This episode of the Tech Waka podcast is proudly brought to you by Wires Uncrossed, lifting the standard of software delivery across New Zealand, Australia, and beyond. A big thanks to Wires Uncrossed for supporting the Tech Waka mission and backing the voices of our tech leadership community. To learn more, go to wiresuncrossed.co.nz. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Jakub, how are you?
Good. It's great to have you here. You and I have been talking for a while now, and I remember that we met maybe 3-4 months ago, and we talked about a gap that we could see in the New Zealand tech leadership community, and we talked that we wanted to do something about it. Do you want to tell us what it is and how it all came together?
We kind of thought that there was kind of like an event missing, kind of like a conference, but not really, somewhere where people from different leadership tracks could kind of talk to each other. Because the thing is, generally those leadership roles tend to be, you have one CTO, you have one CXO, or one head. So that means that you work with your company, your team, and that could be really good. But you don't have a way to talk across to someone exactly like you that has also your problems. And this happens across multiple roles. And we thought it'd be amazing to do something that to provide that place. And also, we felt like, I think we talked a lot about how different pressures, something like AI and kind of trying economic situation and many other things, difficult to maybe the way we would like to. And so thinking about how do we not only provide that place for conversing for these different roles, but also how do we maybe even think about how to do it in a sustainable way so that our organizations are there today and we perform work today and we do it in an effective way, but also so that they're here in a year, 5 years, 10 years, We came up with this, which is Beacon.
You talk about different tracks, and we indeed have speakers and the tracks in the conference. One is about people leadership and maybe executive leadership and kind of leadership on its own. We also talk about product and customer leadership, and we talk about architecture leadership. Why do you think it's so important that we get these people talking to each other and exchanging thoughts and ideas?
Well, it's hard sometimes to talk across because you're trying to fix your problem. If you're if you are the technology person, then generally you're gonna be, or the technology architecture, and you're trying to manage that. Or if you're doing the people management, you tend to narrow into that. Sometimes not so much. You obviously need to keep the company's strategic direction in mind as well. But how much do we talk to each other about the difficulties and of our decisions? Does that happen as much as it should? I was surprised when I turned up to an event the other day, and I was surprised about how much of their roles, quite similar to the type of work. Then there's a huge overlap on what they are thinking about. That maybe that doesn't surface while you're working, because it's this kind of metacognition and the sharing of, I think about this and I think about that, and this is how I make decisions. Do you have time to have those conversations during work all the time? Maybe not. So this is why we kind of thought these 3 ideas: making systems happen and bringing and bridging them together.
Cool. And you started talking about our main theme for the offsite, for the event, which I think you came with that idea of sustainable evolution. Tell us more what it is, why it is so important, why should we spend the whole day exploring it with other people and making it the main theme for the event?
I mean, I'll take the credit for coming up with the right words or the words that we think. But in reality, I think if the theme is both of us, Jakub. Come on. I think we were both kind of trying to give the space to find a nice solution. So it's not just about finding any solution, but finding a solution that agrees with what I think a lot of the people that we invite are also interested in. Like, we want to have healthy teams. We want to work in places where people feel like doing something important and giving them an environment healthy, effective, where they can be curious and explore, and most importantly, innovate in ways. And I think that's where all of this comes from, is that idea of sometimes the pressures of today make us feel maybe we need to go really fast and be busy all the time. And I think most people, the way to do things well is to have that kind of time to think, to be considered. And sometimes that feels counterintuitive when people are asking you to be in a rush. So it's that finding the balance.
Yeah.
What about you? Like, because I mean, as I said, I really do think that the theme is something we've come up with together. I just happened to come up with the words that we kind of thought, oh, yeah, that works, but it could have been either of us, really.
Yeah.
So what is it like for you?
I feel that throughout the years, I learned that there's change happening all the time in the market, in our companies, in our teams, in our lives. And everything is changing all the time and everything is evolving. And I think that we often see these big changes in technology, like right now we can see with AI and Gen AI, all of these tools. And we think that it's kind of these big changes, step changes. But I do prefer to look at it as an evolution because it helps you understand the nature of it, and rarely a big change and the big bang deployments and just implementing a change or transformation. I have never really seen that working well. So thinking about sustainable change and evolution for me, it's key for leadership. It's key to understand how it could look like, why it's important to engage people in this sort of change, how leadership could look like through that change. And leadership, again, from a point of view of leadership frameworks and approaches, from the point of view of product and customer, and what it means for technology as well, and our teams and delivery. So it all comes together. And how do we bring all of those voices to talk about it? And I'm sure we're going to talk about AI at some point at this event, and how does sustainable evolution looks when you talk about AI and implement AI and use AI, but also how does it look for your teams when you want them to be high performing? What does it mean to your architecture when maybe you have some legacy code or maybe some old approach to your architecture? How do you change that, knowing that maybe you have new products or new technology that you want to implement and it's not maybe compatible right now or not easily integrated? So I think all of this is really important for us to create space for conversation. And I think that having that space brings us to the format of the structure of the event, because we discussed that we wanted to mix a bit of maybe stimulation from speakers with engagement with the participants. How is the day of Beacon structured?
We actually were very excited to bring something like this to reality because we were able to have a bit of a conference in the morning, and the idea here is seed the conversations. So we brought some really exciting, I think, speakers that they would be talking in the format of 20-minute talk each, followed by answers, 2 talks, followed by a panel, and they're in this group. So one of them is more about how to deal with the whole management aspect, and then the strategic aspect, and then kind of architecture aspect. And I kind of give those labels in a very, very loose way. And after that, we lunch, because eating food is important. Maybe have a bit of a chat and a little bit of a walk near the beautiful area of Wynyard in Auckland. And after that, and with kind of a nice recharge, we go into the second part of the day, which is all about an unconference. So people can, they heard some good tips and ideas and start thinking about their current problems and solutions they're looking for, etc. And now they get to hash it out. And so we use the unconference format to provide the good framework for that. There are
Yeah,
some
perfect.
other bits.
Yeah.
So there's some details that I think that you added to the format that I love those ideas. And that's about this, how to ask questions during the panel. Do you want to talk about that?
I think one thing that's really important that we want to drive from the get-go, from the early morning, is to get engagement and participation from people who come to the event. So we don't want this event to be you just come and you listen, you go home. We actually expect people to be active throughout the day. And this starts with the morning, where we're going to have speakers here sharing and kind of seeding, as you said, seeding some ideas or maybe questions, seeding some questions. And after every two speakers, we're going to have them answering questions, but we want those questions to come from the audience. And we will facilitate that harvesting of questions, let's call it. So we're going to harvest some questions from the audience, and we'll use those questions to have a really good discussion with our speakers. So we want this to be engaging for both the speakers and the participants. And all of that should create, as you said, these seeds for the afternoon when we have unconference. And I'm a huge believer in unconferences and the format of open space, when we co-create the agenda, where we figure out together what we want to talk about, and we have just a few principles that we follow, and we co-create the events together, which I think is going to be the power of it. I would be very surprised if people come out of the event without learning tons of new things, but also having questions and maybe creating new connections with others. And the event should follow up with probably dozens of coffees happening and meetings in the community happening after that, because we want this event to create this feeling of community and connections, and it's going to be a great chance for networking, for the lack of better word, and for solving problems together.
That's a beautiful vision for it. Like
Yeah.
I love that kind of. This is what we would love. I think that
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
represented.
Yeah.
I'm aware that maybe some of our listeners might have not had experienced a non-conference. So do you want to explain at a high level how that? So what is a non-conference, Jacob?
Unconference is an alternative way to host conferences or events. And it came from this idea of when you are at the conference, and I think it was Tim O'Reilly, who created the concept of, when he was at conferences, he found out that he got more value from the discussions between the talks, at the coffee table or during lunch, just meeting people and talking to them. He found that more useful than actual speakers and presentations. So he thought, well, what if we flip the script on conferences? And he called it unconference. And we actually have only those conversations. So people actually come up with topics that they are curious about. They with problems they want to solve, questions they want to engage others in, and let's have that as the main event. So the whole concept of unconference is based on a structure called open space, and there are some, I think, a handful of principles that just create the beautiful space of us having conversations and giving power to the participants and making everyone an expert. At the same time, everyone is a beginner. So it's just a beautiful engagement of curiosity, but also expertise, where we can jump from being, again, an expert and a beginner within a minute, basically. I love being participant, but also love facilitating on conferences and this sort of events. So yeah, looking forward to it.
My experience on conferences have always, you go with some ideas and you come out with so much more. It's like it feels such an emergent thing. It's a beautiful thing that's hard to explain unless you've been there. Generally, you gotta think, oh well, but what are you gonna get? The good news is that you've done, but the good news is also that you will get something you like because you're actually making it yourself.
At the same time, and I had this experience before from hearing it from the participants, that some of them are very anxious and scared that, oh, the agenda is empty, what's going to happen? And then when they embrace it, when they actually share their ideas, when they join these conversations, which they didn't expect at the beginning. And they, as you said, at the end of it, they came out enriched and just full of connections and new ideas and things that they have never thought about. So yeah, there's a lot of surprises, and probably that's one of the main expectations for the participants of an conference is be ready to be surprised. Maybe two more topics that we should talk about. One is that we want to have a rather small number of participants. So it's not a 200 people event. We are inviting about 30 people plus the speakers to the event. So you're going to have, with the two of us, maybe 40 people at the Great Auckland on the 13th of October. Why do we have only 30 people?
Well, I think there's multiple. I think the most important one is that it's easier to have conversations with a small group. There's also the logistics. If you wanted to do this much bigger, it will be quite tricky for us as organizers, and we're doing this for the first time. So we want to see how it goes. And also facilitates the third thing, which is we decided to go for a no sponsors conference.
I found it that often when I go to those leadership conferences, there are sponsors who often get a special place in the agenda, or they have a booth that they present their product and services. And I find that it sometimes makes the agenda or the event biased towards kind of those solutions and those products. And second thing is that, again, we want this event to allow people to connect and have conversations with each other and solve problems. And when you are bombarded by ads and sales pitches all of the time, and you can learn about products, but you often start seeing solutions and you forget about problems. But I think it's really important for us, and that's why we're creating this event, is that we want people to talk about problems, because fully understanding the problems and exploring them is often at the core of it. So let's not talk about products and solutions. Let's not start from this angle. Let's start with problems. And I hope that we will create a space and having sponsors. And there's nothing wrong with having sponsors. So if you're running an event, you have a sponsor, that's great. Like, cool. We just decided that we wanted to run the first edition without any sponsors so that we could be free, feeling that we can have the event that we want without any pressure of kind of changing into sponsors. But also we wanted to create an event when we focus on the big problems that we see in leadership, in technology, in New Zealand, and we didn't want to focus on solutions.
Yeah, I think focusing on the problems, it could sound a little bit kind of negative. I think if you understand the problem and you get multiple angles, it also means that no one is mandating a solution. There is no political, I'm sure there's some political, not as much as within. Nobody, they're not in your company. And maybe there is some people from the same company turning up, and that's okay. But it's like you're outside. And sometimes people from outside your system, they can have a much better view of your system because they're not part of it. Which is actually why I think consultants are necessary in an ecosystem. And I know I'm slightly biased because I'm a consultant, but this is why it works. Like one more reason why something like this works is that outside of your problem when you discuss it, without a mandated solution or, I really want you to use this, as you were saying on the sponsors.
All right, so we are opening the tickets to the public on Monday. It's going to be the 1st of September in the evening. And who do you think should go and buy a ticket? Who should attend?
Well, that's a great question. I think people that should attend are people tech leadership. And when we're saying tech leadership, we mean a CX, basically X being replace your letter for basically a CXO of a company, especially kind of medium size, probably this is a good place for you. If you're in a larger company, heads off, probably quite suitable. If you're an aspiring to be in that role, probably quite suitable because you're going to learn. Am I missing someone?
I think it's important to mention that we when we talk about leadership, we talk about, and technical leadership, we have very wide definitions. So And that's why we have this kind of different tracks, let's call them. So we talk about people in architecture, heads of platforms, for example, or chief architects or staff engineers. Like these people certainly can and should come. We're talking about product people, so senior product managers, head of product. We're talking about the CTOs, CIOs, head of IT, like all of these. And we know, especially in New Zealand, these roles, they are quite fluid and different people can have different roles, and sometimes they mean seniority and sometimes they mean level of experience, but we don't really care so much about the names of the roles. It's just if you are in any sort of role when you have an element of leadership and you work in a tech department or tech organization or product organization, I think you're gonna find this event very useful to be able to learn and connect and talk about problems and be with your peers, really. So by the time we were recording it before we made the tickets public, but by the time you hear it, the tickets should be public now. Go to beaconconf.com to find the link to the tickets. Come and join us again, 13th of October, Monday in Auckland. We'd love to see you there, right?
Yeah, we would love to see you there. Also, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out to us. Probably via LinkedIn is the easiest way, but if you know us, and I'm sure you can find us by name somewhere. And like feedback, comments, questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea. It was great to have this chat.
Thank you, Jacob. And actually, before we go, we should maybe talk about a little bit about another event that happens just before that.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Yeah.
Cool. So I'd like to invite people in TechWaka and the TechWaka podcast listenership, I guess, to an event storming workshop. So this is a hands-on event in TradeMe on the 17th of September after work. And what event storming gives you is a way to your business with the main events. So I hope to see you there.
So I remember a couple of times at my company, we engaged in event storming workshops, and I've never really seen a proper way to do it. So we try to do it by, reading blogs and watching some videos. So I think that's a great way to have hands-on experience. So highly recommending this to everyone who is interested in domain-driven design and event storming. Like that's a great way to get started, I think.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
great.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrea. Bye.
Thank you, Jacob.